Hey everybody, welcome back to the 45th episode of Taps and Patience. I am AJ with Designing Everything, here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity, and we have Benjamin of Black Fox Machining. Hi everybody, how you doing?
Doing good.
I seriously considered opening with the Within Tolerance intro because we've had 2 guests in a row, and I think we've had a total of 4 guests. So we're on quite the interview streak at the moment.
Yeah, I like having guests on.
I do too. We should do it more.
We should. So Benjamin.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of jumped in there a minute.
Yeah, we do that a lot more when there's 3 of us.
It is. We gotta get a rhythm down. That's always the hard part about having multiple people. But why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, basically, I run a small little side hustle in my garage here. I've got about a 900 square foot area with a CNC machine I built and also a Syil, and we'll jump into that. But yeah, I just kind of make all sorts of stuff. Knives are kind of my main thing. Just stuff that I want to have. So I started making wallets a long time ago. I called them the Atlas wallet, and I made them on a CNC router that I had built and designed by myself, but it had no tool changer. So I learned very quickly how difficult it is to make a product and to be financially stable with a product when you're the one changing out 7 bits for one part. So, but yeah, Black Fox Machining is my Instagram. I just started messing around with YouTube. I don't know where that's going to go. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I think the most fun thing about is just like the community in general. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but the Insta Machinist community, I guess you could call it, has just been so fun to like learn, get to know you guys and everybody else. That's how I got this machine. So super, super fun stuff.
So what sort of equipment are you running now?
Basically the Syil. So ever since I picked up the Syil machine, I wanted to basically have 2 spindles running all the time. But my homemade machine, it's just after running the Syil, it's really hard to want to go back and run it because it's slow, it breaks down, and I build it, so I can dog on it all I want. And then I also have my CNC router, which I just used actually last night. I had a buddy come over. We built a pedal board for his guitar rig, so that was fun. But on a regular basis, it's the Syil.
That's awesome.
Yep. So
this machine you built, how long did it take you? About what's its like horsepower and kind of some of its speeds and feeds, just to kind of get an idea of what it's like compared to your Syil, just out of curiosity.
yeah. So the CNC mill was basically born from having like built the CNC router and realizing that it is not capable of machining like anything more than like aluminum. So I wanted to build basically a Tormach for as cheap as possible and make it very rigid. I wanted to have a tool changer, so I ended up putting a BT30 spindle on it, and that was a spindle cartridge that I paired with I think it was a 2 horsepower induction motor. So that was a 3-phase induction motor that I had to use a VFD to power. And then I went and used ClearPath motors, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. I even feel like Tormach uses ClearPath servos, if that's correct. So I got those through work. Yeah,
They do.
Yeah, they are awesome. I really, really like them. The auto tune feature, just the way to set them up. So let's see. Yeah, basically I got a lot of stuff through work. I learned how to weld on that machine, and I filled it with epoxy granite. Just everything I could think about doing that I've seen other people do on CNC machines, I tried to put in this one. The only thing that it was missing, which is huge, is flood coolant and a proper enclosure. And when you don't have flood coolant or a proper enclosure, it doesn't really matter how great your machine is. You're not going to be able to cut certain materials. And that was such a sticking point for that machine. But I built a 18 holder ATC, so a tool carousel. I had to understand how to figure out what macros are and kind of build that out. And that was really fun. Figure out how to position the spindle and get it to orient every single time I went to change a tool. So dropped a lot of tools, messed up a lot of holders. I 3D printed the little claws, and I don't recommend 3D printing the claws because they're not very strong. But yeah, extremely good machine for what it did, and I was able to make countless knives on it, make all of my money back on it. I used double nut ball screws, high wind linear rail that were all 25 millimeter. My previous job, I worked as a mechanical engineer at a water jet company. And so we manufactured custom water jet machines and tailored them to anybody. So you can imagine like a custom shop is going to have a lot of parts laying around because they're like, well, this was like a one-off build. And then they would like throw out linear rail. They would throw out ball screws. They would throw out motors. It was a gold mine for engineers. And it was so fun because the guys I worked with all built CNC machines. So we were all kind of in the same, like, they called us like vultures at work. They're just like, yeah, well, the engineers are going to grab all this stuff. So so that's how I built that machine, and I am proud of it. It's sitting back there. I used my wife's Cricut, and I call it the NOS VF No. So that's like a nod to the Haas VF1. But yeah. Yep.
That's awesome. I would. You should be very proud of that. I've often toyed with the ideas of making a machine and then talk myself out of it because it's just the amount of work and effort and dedication it would take. That's impressive. So regardless of how it machines, how it compares to newer machines, the work and the time that you spent to make that, one, you're going to know stuff that's most people probably won't, which is impressive. But two, it's an awesome achievement.
Thank you.
And then you turn around and start making money with it. I mean, that's my hat's off to you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've had a lot of DMs.
All right, and so let's talk about the Syil.
Okay.
Sorry, I think there's a lot of lag between us right now, so we may talk over.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I was just going to say I've had a lot of DMs asking, should I build a machine? Should I buy one? And basically what it comes down to is, do you have a ton of time and a lot of like headache capacity? And do you want to like make money, or do you want to like have a project? And I learned that really quickly. That's why my next machine was going to be something I bought. So yeah, we can talk about the Syil now. I think that's a great transition. So the Syil.
Yeah. So let's talk. Go ahead.
There's a lot of lag.
Or there is.
Okay. All right. I'll talk about the Syil.
Do we need to do like the clap thing?
I was waiting for you guys to talk. That's so funny.
As long as we're quiet, as long as we're quiet, Zencastr will edit it out though, so that works.
Yeah.
Ben, talk about the Syil.
So the Syil behind me here, it was basically a machine that I've been saving up for a very long time after building my homemade machine. The reason I built a homemade machine was to be able to save up enough money to buy either a Haas, probably not a Tormach, because the machine that I had built, other than it not having flood coolant, was very similar to a Tormach. After filling it with epoxy granite, the thing was over 1,000 pounds. It was a very rigid machine. So I was between basically a Haas, a Syil, maybe an old Fadal. Everybody kind of goes down that rabbit hole where they're like, I'll just buy like a cheap old machine and like retrofit the heck out of it and put new parts on it and just hope everything works. And that didn't make me feel that comfortable because I wanted to make money off of it. So yeah, I'd been saving up for the Syil X7, and a buddy of mine on Instagram, you guys might know him, Sean and James Serven, I think is how you say their last name. They reached out to me, and I think it was probably about 6 months ago. He said, hey, I know that you really like the X7, and I even mentioned, I think I was to him that I was saving up for one. And he said, we actually might be getting rid of it soon. Is that something that you're interested in? And I was just like, whoa, this is amazing, because I had another at least 2 years of like saving. And I was like, well, there's no way I can afford this. And the short of it basically is he gave me an incredible deal. He had a machine coming in, a robo drill, his second robo drill. So he's doing incredibly well. He had a robo drill coming in, needed the space, and we worked it all out. I'm in Ohio. He's in New York. I wired a bunch of money over to him. It failed like 3 times. The company, this is wild. The company that rigged it, basically they didn't strap it down. They did one strap over top, but they didn't like bolt it down. And because this was my baby and a lot of money, I sent them an engineering drawing that I created in Fusion with like all the leg points that like how it should be bolted down to the pallet, everything. And they're like, yeah, we're the rigging company. Don't worry about it. So they didn't care at all. And they thought that I was James because we went through like, he did all of the arrangement and everything. And it was a really messy situation. And it got to my house in one piece. It was not upside down, which was a good thing. And then just the other thing you can't make up is I hired a rigger, and in front of my shop, I have non-compacted gravel, and this is like a 5,000-pound machine. He brought an 18,000-pound forklift with a rollback, so like one of those large trucks with like the rollback back into it, rolled the forklift off, and immediately got stuck because it's like an 18,000-pound forklift.
Oh no!
And he could not get that thing to budge at all. The shipper from like New York was just standing there for like a half an hour. Like, is this ever gonna, is this guy ever gonna get out of these rocks? So I have a video of it, and I posted this to my YouTube. It was very terrifying, but he used the rollback, got it as close as he could to the truck, and there was a good 4 or 5 inches of gap from the box truck and the rollback, and maybe like 10 feet of unsupported with like the hydraulic here. And he takes a chain hoist, and we hoist it off of the box truck onto the rollback. It was so terrifying. It's suspended like, I don't know, like 6 feet in the air. My wife and kids are behind me. You can just see my wife with like big eyes, and I'm like freaking out. So it was a very terrifying thing. And then once we got it off of that, because we had no forklift, we had it on the rollback. We had to move the truck, get it close to the forklift, put the forklift up, get it on the forklift, move the truck out of the way. It took like well over 4 hours, and we got it down on the ground, and we used the truck to push the forklift with the machine in my gravel to my shop door. It was wild. I would not recommend it at all. My guy, the guy I hired, he felt so bad because he's like, oh, I thought these would have been compacted. I'm like, no, like hardly anybody's ever driven on them. So it took like, I think it was a solid 4 hours because I had taken work off, and I didn't think it would take that long. But we got it in here safe and sound, and I ended up buying a machine that I had no power for. So then I had to figure out power. There was 20 amps out here that I was running this old machine on. So if I turned a vacuum on and like one other thing while the machine was running, lose all my power. So I had to figure out how to trench 100 amps out here. So it's really been like a huge learning process, and an expensive one too, because of all the added, costs of just getting a machine. And if anybody's ever like looking at, buying whether it's an X7 or any sort of CNC mill, you really got to take into account like shipping, rigging, power requirements, air requirements. So those are all kind of like the hidden things that you might not think about. I definitely thought about them, but it was not fun to pay them. Let's just say that. I had a little Excel spreadsheet that I'm like, okay, this is how much it's going to be. And the machine now is like way more expensive than what I wanted to pay. But it's here. It's making great parts. And I've been making molds on it. I don't have any of the molds. But basically the leftover that I had to pull from savings on it, I've already made up from making molds and selling knives. So it was definitely a very good investment, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So that was super long, but yeah.
When you say making molds, do you want to go into that a little bit? Because I'm not sure what you mean. Are you making like injection molds? Like, do you have an injection mold machine, or are you making them for someone else?
Yeah, basically it's as simple as you can get with a mold. It's basically a piece of aluminum and it's got a cavity. And right now some of them are fishing lure molds. And so they're pouring like a molten plastic in there. And then it creates just like a flat on the top. I also did a few molds for a friend that were like rubber molds. And they were also still one-sided machined cavity. So then he just presses the rubber in there. Really simple jobs, but great jobs for the
Gotcha.
Syil. So
That's awesome. So you're a product based. So this is a side hustle for you, correct? And your main product that you're doing is a utility knife.
yeah, that's correct.
Is that
I
correct?
started with making kind of a more premium flipper knife, which you might be able to see. Actually, the right side of that page at the very top, that would be like the flip knife all the way to the top. Yep, there you go. That's the one that I actually have in my hand. And that's a little bit more premium. I can show you here. That's actually easier to watch the video. But it has a G10 backspacer, a G10 blade holder with a magnetic lock detent. So there's two magnets 180 degrees away from each other. So when you open it up, you can kind of hear that click. It locks into place. And because you're always kind of cutting toward you and down, that pressure is always kind of keeping the tool open. So, and there's also like these little holes here to put your fingers in. So it won't collapse on you, or it shouldn't. So I made those out of G10 and brass because my machine that I built has no flood coolant, and aluminum is basically the easiest thing you could ever machine, but you have to have like flood coolant or some sort of cooling. So I did a lot of composites on the machine I built, and I think I will continue to do composites on it, like G10, micarta, carbon fiber, because I don't ever want to run those on my flood coolant machine. So I think that's where it'll be really nice to have two machines. But yeah, that's my flipper. And these were really fun to make, but they do take a long time, and they are a little expensive. I don't sell them currently. But the most recent one that I came up with is a pretty simple, I call it the slide. And basically it's just a piece of aluminum with some slots here,
Mm-hmm.
and also a magnetic lock bar. So I don't know if you can see that very well. But basically the detent is held in place
Mm-hmm.
with a magnet, so it acts like a spring. Yeah, and in this video you can see it pretty well. That's actually a titanium lock bar that I made. So I've been having a lot of fun with those, and I've been making those entirely on the Syil machine. And my process is to basically take a piece of bar stock about 7.5 inches by 1.25 inches, and I can get two full
Mm-hmm.
bodies out of it. And these machine in, I would say, about 8 minutes for this first stop. And when I was making them on my homemade machine, this right here, and it's not even as pretty, the surface finishes to be desired, but these took like 15 to 20 minutes for that op. So you can see how going to the Syil with more horsepower, having the flood coolant has really just upped my game. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
it used to take me it used to take me a month to make about 10 of these slides. And when I first got the Syil, in 2 days, I think I had like 15 made. I was just like having so much fun, but it was just like such a reliable, such a reliable and precise machine that every time I pulled a part off and I checked it and like made sure that the blade fit, it just fit every single time. So there's that was like a huge thing. Just process reliability has increased like tenfold.
What do you think about the controller on the Syil? How has that been to learn?
Yeah, so I have the LNC controller, which, as I understand, I believe it's a Chinese controller, and there's no real U.S. support for it, and that's what Servent Solutions got. So to help you understand a little bit better, I have a single phase Style X7, which basically lets me run it off of 220 single phase. It's rated now for 4 horsepower. Don't quote me on all this, but basically you have to derate it because you're on single phase. And the other machines, you can get different controllers. I believe the Syntec 22MA is the like US based controller, and that is a 3-phase machine. But you don't have to have 3-phase power. You just need some way of converting single phase to 3-phase, which would be like a phase converter, which I believe those machines ship with a phase converter, rotary, or maybe a digital phase converter. But you can get Siemens and a 5-axis module for like the trunnion work, and then the Syntec. So I have the LNC. It is definitely there's definitely a learning curve, but I have to say, James and Sean, they like made a Google Doc when we were like talking back and forth. They like made a Google Doc of like step by step how to turn the machine on, how to do like everything on it, tool changes, tool set. Just they were incredible. And then they're like, hey, when you first get it turned on, like just call us and we can like play on it for a couple hours and help you understand. So it really wasn't as difficult as it could have been, but not having their support, I think, would have been a little tricky. I know that the Tormach uses PathPilot, and that's like a really nice like layout, like a GUI and all that. The LNC has a lot of features, and it has a lot of industrial features, but if you don't know how to get to them, it's like useless, you know? So it's just a lot of like playing around with it, running it super slow because it's not fun to crash a 5,000 pound machine. But basically it has all the features that I would want. I use Haas VF2s, VF3s, VF4s at work. As an engineer, we kind of have our own CNC mill for prototyping. And I've had to learn that control in and out to be able to do hand programming, conversational, running probes. And all of the features on a Haas I can basically find on my LNC controller. It just maybe takes a little bit longer, and there might be a couple more button presses. I think that's the best way I can explain it.
That's good.
Do you have the probing package and tool setter?
I don't. I don't have a probe.
And do you use it?
I have the tool setter, which is I love it. I don't think I would ever buy a machine without a tool setter. That's just so handy. And then Servent Solutions, they actually gave me a Heimer, and I didn't know if I would like it. It's really nice. Before I didn't have any probing, and I would just you guys are gonna like make fun of me, but basically I would just take a V-bit and like lower it down with like the paper method, and I did that for all of my stuff. And because I was doing fixture work for all these knives, I had like a little fixture set up. my G54, 55, all that were in the same place. So like it didn't really change. It was just like Z heights and stuff like that that I had to mess with. But highly recommend a tool setter. And I think I eventually want to get a probe. And because I've had a lot of experience with doing DIY machines, like adding a probe to the LNC controller, like it doesn't scare me at all. Um, Plus, one more thing to say, there is an incredible community around these machines, the Syil X7, Syil in general. They have an X5, which is a little bit smaller, way faster. It's a really cool machine. Go check it out. They have an X9 and an X11. The X11 is maybe more comparable to a VF2. And there's a great community on Facebook. It's a closed group, but anybody can really join. And it's the Syil Facebook page. And everybody is like happy to help. They don't like make you feel stupid, which is great. So
It's awesome. Hey AJ, you want to talk a little bit about your probe because we kind of talked about the probe and or the tool setter, which is definitely awesome. I don't think AJ, have you always had a probe on all your machines?
All of my machines that were 1100 sized or larger have had a probe.
Okay,
I guess I haven't had anything larger. So yes, all of my machines that were 1100s have had probes. I've had plenty of machines before that without probing, like
okay,
the Pocket NC, for example, my Shurelines, the router that I started with. I've had a couple of machines without probes, but I
yeah.
am all for probes now. I recently just got a wireless probe for my machine, upgrade from the wired Tormach one, and that has been huge. I've been using that constantly, and I'm making better parts for it, like notably better parts with the new probe. So that's been really really nice.
Do you want to talk about what you're doing and why you needed it to be wireless and why that is making better parts?
Well, obviously, the reason for a wireless probe over a wired probe is you can put a wireless probe in your tool carousel, and therefore the machine can probe when you are not there. If you have a wired one, you have to manually load the probe every time, which really, like, realistically gets you 99% of the capability of a probe because most of the time you're just using it to set work coordinate systems. But with the wireless probe, you can do things like stop halfway through the program and make adjustments to the position of your part. So, for example, I just ran some op ones on a pretty simple part. Those op ones have a top hat on them, and so it's very hard to locate um, the precision machine features underneath the top hat for op2 to get a good alignment on stuff like the chamfers. And so my program, it just, using a very roughly set work coordinate system, it just decks off the top of the top hat, and then it probes the precision machined features, and then it goes back in and does my chamfer. So everything lines up just perfectly. And it's like you can do that without a probe. You can do that by setting up a work stop, and maybe it takes a part or two to dial in. But with a probe, it's just so much quicker and more accurate. It's all just automated. And then also, I have some parts that I make, my carabiners. The thickness on those is not. Let me phrase that. I do not machine off the top of those carabiners to get them to a consistent thickness because I found that due to internal stresses in the material, it was causing all kinds of mayhem with my parts when I faced off the top of them. Literally, some of these carabiners were bending themselves up by like an inch inside my fixture. And so instead, what I do to make sure that again, all of the chamfers and countersinks and everything's are the right size is I will probe the thickness of each carabiner before I machine the features on it. At least for op2. For op1, I just probe the sheet once. And it's been just a huge step forwards in process reliability. I really love it.
Did you get your master program working?
Yes and no. So I wrote basically a palette manager program. That's kind of overselling it, but I have the palettes that I use on my machine. They just bolt down to my Saunders Machine Works table. They're not automated. They're not quick change or anything. but I can fit multiple pallets on the machine at the same time. Depending on what size of pallet, I can fit 2, 3, 4 on there. And I wanted to be able to mix and match which pallets I ran at any given time. So, like, let's say I'm setting up a night run and I want to run, op one of the carabiners, and then um, the pry bars. I wanted to run those as well. The programs for those are in different Fusion files. You can't just easily, stick them all into one uh, set of G code quickly and easily. So I wrote a palette manager that has a list of all of my programs in it, and they're all commented out. And so if you want to choose what 2 programs you want, you just uncomment them on the control and hit cycle start, and it'll do both of the palettes. So that's been that was nice in theory, but then I immediately broke my tool setter, and
Oh no.
I use my tool setter for tool breakage detection on my long overnight runs. And without that tool breakage detection, I haven't been comfortable running it overnight. So I haven't run it overnight at all for the past week.
So wait, is your wireless probe broke right now then?
No, my wireless probe is fine. I broke my tool setter.
Your tool setter. Yeah.
Yeah. It was so annoying. It was a software bug that killed it. I don't know. I ran a program and there was a tool that needed a manual tool change. I realized that tool was supposed to be in the ATC, and I just hadn't told the machine to put it in. And so it was halfway through the program. I just hit the stop button on the controller so I could tell it to put it in the ATC. And instead of for whatever reason, the path pilot was just I'm going to drop the tool. And it dropped the tool directly onto my tool setter.
Oh no.
For no apparent reason. And that was the end of that. I tried to fix it, but by the time I got it taken apart, there was nothing super obviously wrong, and I couldn't figure out how to fix it. So I ordered a new one from Drewtronics, which is the same company that makes my wireless probe, and it just got here today. So I'll get that on tomorrow, and then we can go back to running overnight. But yeah, that was a bummer, just to hit cycle stop and then all of a sudden you lose your touch probe.
Oh my goodness. That's very frustrating. Your machine has dropped a couple tools.
It does it occasionally. I've never really figured out what the common denominator is. I don't know why it does it. I think, like I said, I think it's some bug, but I can't figure out how to recreate the bug.
Yeah.
So speaking of machine catastrophes, Ben,
yeah,
I saw a broken window.
Yeah. It was a pretty terrifying experience, but I was running Op2 on a part with pretty thin walls. I also had the vise tilted 90 degrees. So these are a lot of things that you really shouldn't do. The funny part is I was running Op2 with a 1/4-inch end mill because I have thrown a part before with a face mill. And I was like, I'll just run the 1/4-inch end mill. And I used the same feeds and speeds, which are very aggressive. It was 200 inches a minute with a 70 thou radial step over. And when you're only holding on to 1/8 of an inch on each side of the part, because that's all it was just smooth draws. Everything went perfectly wrong. And in an instant, I heard a super loud noise, and I was standing right at the machine on the right side of behind the right window, which is where the control panel is. And I just hear this super loud sound. And I'm like, oh my goodness, did I lose a tool? Did I throw the part? So then I see, oh, my machine's just still going, still got the end mill, a 1/4-inch end mill, just completely fine. But no aluminum part anywhere to be found. And so I'm looking in the window, and then I see, oh, this window has all the spidering, that you get when you break a windshield or something in a car. So then I need to open up the door and see if I can find the part in the machine. And I look, as I'm opening up the door, I look down, and there's a massive hole. I think if you click to the next picture on that thing, You might be able to see the hole. That might have been when I was tearing it apart. But basically, I have a post where you can see that hole, and it was like 4 inches, maybe 3 to 4 inches away from like where my side would have been. So had I been like standing, I don't know, just like even not even a foot over to the left, that little aluminum part would have gone straight into me along with all that glass, which I actually have glass on this desk. I've got little pieces right here still because it shot all that glass about 20 feet, including the part. The part got super damaged. My window got completely destroyed. But after kind of stepping away from it, I was like, man, that could have been so bad. And I normally have my son out here with me because he just loves to hang out with dad and press a button on daddy's machine. He calls it the machine, and it was right at like where his head height would be. So like I can't imagine the damage I would have gotten if it would have gone to my stomach, but it's a little scary to think like, man, if he was in there. So it happened at 11 p.m. and I come in. My wife is just sound asleep. And so I wake her up in the morning. I'm like, hey, I posted something on social media. Just a heads up, this happened last night. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. And then she texts me like a couple hours later. And she's like, oh my gosh, I just realized like what you told me. I'm like, yeah, it was pretty terrifying. So, but basically, I don't think they used like safety glass or like polycarbonate or I ended up, right now I'm in the process of replacing all of my windows on my own with polycarbonate just because that's like shatter resistant, shatter proof. I mean, this was a very small piece of aluminum, maybe weighed about 5 ounces, and it shot out like a bullet and it shattered a window. Like that should never really happen on a CNC machine. I'll take full blame for having the vise position in the incorrect way. Although nobody told me that that was incorrect until I had a catastrophe. But the only reason I did that was because of the travel. The vise would have hit the door, and then I would have had another broken window. But yeah, everything's okay. My pride, got hurt a little bit, but I was fine. It felt like somebody threw sand at me really hard, and then I realized, oh, that was glass like hitting me, but I'm fine too. Just it makes you realize like, hey, every machine is trying to kill me, and like no matter how safe I think I am, I just like have to respect like what I'm doing, and that's why I'm replacing all these windows with polycarbonate, just so I know that it's safe. So I posted it to the Facebook group, and it kind of blew up a little bit. I was not trying to like create any sort of drama, but it was more of a PSA, like, hey guys, this happened. I can't be the only one that has shattered a window, but
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story. I was just going to say when you get a second. So just because you're changing it out with polycarbonate, I will warn you, that might not be enough depending on what goes wrong. So I don't know if I told this story on the podcast or not.
Nope, I don't know what's coming here.
Okay, so um, when my Haas lathe was dropped off, and I was talking to the technician, um, whenever we were installing it, I had thrown a part, and it was probably the hardest part I've ever thrown in my Tormach. And it didn't break anything, it didn't hurt anything. It did slightly dent the side of my machine, though. Not anything big, like, just like a small bump. You wouldn't notice it unless you were looking for it. But we were talking about it, and he was telling me the story of um, he heard about it from another technician that he was working. Either he heard about it or he was on call to go to it. But there was a shop that was running a Haas machine, and they had made their own flywheel, or not flywheel, fly cutter, um, and it was like 8 inches in diameter because they had to make something custom, and it flew, so it was in the tool holder, And what ended up happening was, um, it was a series. It was a series of events. Um, but what ended up happening, I believe, if I remember the story right, is that the cutter that was on that fly, that the fly cutter was a big like aluminum disc, and then they had bolted on a counterweight and then the cutter. And I don't remember if it was the counterweight or the cutter, but one of those came off the flywheel while it was up at speed, and it went through the machine, out the back of the machine. It went through a center block wall, uh, went through um, like a toolbox or two, went through another center block wall, or no, went through a bathroom, and then the center block wall on the other side of the bathroom, and then it stopped. But
I
like,
think I've heard that from somebody else. Like basically the same story.
yeah,
So it's either a really popular story or actually happened. Yeah, it's
no, I saw
yeah,
the video. Like he pulled up the video and showed me the aftermath of it
I
on
don't
his phone,
man.
I don't think
and I think it's posted somewhere.
polycarbonate would
Um,
do like if nothing's gonna stop it, not even cinder blocks.
but
But I mean, my polycarbonate is not gonna stop.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, that's
No, I know. What I'm saying is people have done much dumber stuff. People have done much dumber stuff, and you're holding your vice on 90 is a very common practice in some
yeah.
things. Like,
I had no idea that was a thing you weren't supposed to do.
yeah, I don't think it's a thing you're not supposed to do, because I think I think there's even a Saunders video where he took his orange vices and they were too big for his Tormach, and so he turned them sideways so he could get dual stations on his 1100. I think it was just the M, or the Series 3, back in the day. And but when he first got his vices, he would stick them on there sideways for a lot of his videos. So I don't think it's there's anything wrong with it, because like you said, even if it was on there, quote unquote, the right way, um, just would have
Yeah,
gone out a side
for
window
sure.
instead of the front.
Yeah.
So like, there's still windows on the sides of the machine.
No, I suppose that is the safer mode of failure. Is
True,
going out a side window.
true. It's safer mode, but I mean, my vice, when the one that hit the front of the machine, um, my vice was still in there the quote unquote correct way. So it all depends on how your tool catches, because like, especially if you're like doing an adaptive, that's what caused mine to throw. Wherever your tool's at in the adaptive, and it catches it, that's usually
That's
the
what it
direction
was.
it throws it in.
Yep.
So I don't know if vice orientation might help some, but
Yeah, it was an
I don't know.
adaptive. So
Yeah.
The scariest
But-
part I've ever thrown, I was doing the blue tape super glue method, and the tool pulled the part up off, but the tool didn't break immediately, and it just started spinning up the part really fast, like around the tool, and then the tool broke, and the piece went flying back, and it ripped a hole through my way covers and like dented my ways. I was
Oh
like,
my.
that was a little terrifying. I had that one on video somewhere too. It makes a really satisfying sound.
Oh my goodness. Oh. We need to keep better care of our machines. It sounds like we're all hard on our machines right now.
Yeah, my poor little Tormach gets way more use than it was ever designed for. It was not designed to run 60, 70 hours a week.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a sad truth. We all need to find people that have Syils that they're getting rid of,
Yeah.
so we can join the club.
Speaking of which, I have made a decision. So
Okay.
I was looking for a long time at lathes, so we could make the pens, and I have some other round based products that I wanted to do. And the more I was looking into it, and it was basically like, I don't know, one of the thought processes that led me here is that like if I get a lathe that doesn't have a C-axis and live tooling, then it's just going to put more load on my mill, and my mill is maxed out right now. And that basically makes the lathes you're looking at a bunch more expensive and yada yada yada. And my conclusion was I don't need a lathe right now. I need a mill. And so I'm back to looking at mills. And right now I am basically ready to pull the trigger on a X5. I think I'm gonna go the X5 over the X7 because I can get two of them in here pretty easily. I could probably get two X7s, but it would be crowded. But I could get two X5s and potentially a lathe in here. And I confirmed it fits through my door. So we should be able to get an X5. I I basically am ready to get one now. I think I'm going to wait until after the next Kickstarter. Um, Mostly because I want to see if once the carabiner production is done, if my mill has free time or not. Because I may not need it quite yet. I may be able to push it off another 6 months once I'm done with the current Kickstarter. But I'm that X5 is looking really nice right now.
Yeah. I think you'll get more use out of a second spindle than a lathe, at least
Yeah.
with your current product lineup.
Especially if I introduce the pocket knife, which Scott and I made an executive decision. The pocket knife is not going to be a Kickstarter. The pocket knife is going to be just a regular product, at least for now. We will probably do a future version that has some extra bells and whistles that will be a Kickstarter. The first one is just going to be just a knife. The Kickstarter version will be a multi-tool. But
Which brings up an interesting question. Benjamin, have you ever done a Kickstarter? I haven't really followed any of your products, but were they all launched on Kickstarter, or like, how did you bring them into the world and
more
introduce them to
generally,
the world?
how do you sell things? Like, how are you
Yes.
selling things right now? What's your marketing?
Yeah, I actually
funnel?
I talked to Alex several years ago actually about doing a Kickstarter for my wallets, which these were the ones I was making on the CNC router with no ATC. Basically, you push a button, pushes everything up, and then also locks it all in place. And I thought it was really cool at the time. There's a bunch out there now, so it's not that big of a deal. But basically, I decided that a Kickstarter was not the right approach for me after talking with him because I I had a full-time job. I had a baby on the way, or I think maybe my son was already born. So that added, a level of complexity to it. And I could barely make like 30 in 2 months. So to do a Kickstarter, I would either had to have found somebody that could produce these for me. I mean, it's like way down. Oh, well, yeah, there's the right in the middle there. Yeah, Atlas Vault. There it is. So yeah, that's basically it. It was a pre-anodized aluminum um, piece. Yeah, I think 16th of an inch or something. And I machined that so it was all black and looked really cool. And then I also offered them in Kydex, which is flexible but doesn't like snap. So it's a little bit, feels a little bit nicer in your pocket. And I was thinking about bringing them back. So one of those posts with the slots in it, that's like version 2, and that would be more or less made for like a much more automated process with like ATC, more of a unibody design. But there's a lot of work that goes into those, and I haven't brought them back. But anyway, so I didn't do a Kickstarter. But my Instagram has basically just been growing for the past 3 to 4 years. I had a crazy amount of growth right before Instagram like started Reels, I think is what it was. And I think they maybe changed their algorithm. It was like 100 people or 100 followers like a day. Like I would just get these notifications. I'm like, what in the world? It was when I was building my DIY CNC machine, which I think everybody was like really interested in and like super invested in because it was a really interesting thing. Um, so anyway, I gained a lot of followers. I think I have maybe around 12,000 followers, which is decent. And I realized Instagram is not going to help me out with sales or even showing my content to the people that want to see it. So I created a email list with the help and suggestions of others on Instagram. And basically it's like an email drop list. So when I am ready to release a couple of knives, say maybe like 10 at a time, I will email that list of people, send out like a quick little email that will alert everybody, hey, this Saturday at 1 p.m. And it's really fun for me because then I'm not doing any sort of pre-order, which adds a level of just like, it's almost intimidating for me to take people's money and then have to deliver on a certain date. And what I really like about the drops, what I do with my knives is I would just make what I wanted to make and just have fun. And then I would put them up for sale and see if they would sell. And what's been really fun is they would always sell out like in a day or two. So that's how I'm marketing. I was doing a lot of stuff on Etsy, and then I realized Etsy is taking a huge chunk, and they're not doing anything for me because if I looked at my analytics, basically everybody is coming from my Instagram. So Etsy isn't really doing anything for me. So I don't need to pay them, those extra fees to kind of like show my products to people. So I actually just switched to Square Up. My friend suggested that, and they take, I think, like 3% of each sale. And I think Etsy is like, after it's all said and done, it's like close to 15%. So that's my Square Up website that you have up there. So, but yeah, basically it's really organic, I guess you could say. It just kind of happens. People DM me and I'll be like, get on the email list. I'm not sure when I'm going to have them. And I know that probably frustrates some people, but it's what works right now for me because I've got a full-time job, a family. This is a hobby. I know it doesn't look like it, and eventually I would love for it to be something similar to, a full-time job or something. But right now, that's how it goes. So that's a long way of saying I don't do marketing, and I do a lot of drops just on Instagram. So.
What's a typical drop size?
Like 10, which I know that's not a lot, but especially the flips, they would take a very long time to make. So 10 felt like a lot for me.
And
Are you
about how long would it take? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, are you selling towards like the traditional knife market, or who is your buyer? Is it like the traditional knife market kind of buyer? Is it like machinists? Is it just normal EDC people? Like, where does your normal audience tend to
That's a
land?
great question. I think it's people who have followed me for a while and have really enjoyed seeing the process of everything that I've put into iterating on the design over and over again, not really being happy with the way it locks up, the way it feels, the way it looks. And then I think also some people just like EDC stuff and it's a unique knife. I think utility knives are uh, super unique because like you can customize them very simply. You don't have to worry about carrying one and going into a place. You can just like throw the knife away. So I'm not really sure what my market is, but I've noticed the people who reply back to me either with like positive feedback or something like that, I can get like an idea of like what they're buying it for.
About how long does it take you to make? Like about how often do you do a drop? You said you do a drop of a size of about 10. About how often
The
do you do one?
flips, because they took so long and were so time consuming to make, I would say probably about a 4 month stint. And most people really liked what I was making, but they couldn't afford it. I did a
Oh wow.
titanium one that was like close to $200, I think. It was a really, really cool utility knife, but most people can't, spend that or even over $100 on a knife, a utility knife that you can pick up at Home Depot or something. So that's why I actually started designing the slide. It has a lot less machining on it, and it's a lot easier to assemble. And that's like more the $65 to $70 range.
I wouldn't say that your price market is necessarily too high. When you look at like high end items, I mean, we'll just use our favorite YouTube, Instagram knife maker that everyone knows, Grimsmo. I mean, he makes $1,000 knives and he can't keep any of them in stock. So, um, looking by that market, if you have a product that's quality that has a price that's justified that people will pay, then selling a $200 utility knife is probably going to be a really easy thing to do. People just have to see the value in it that makes it worth that.
Yeah.
I think. Um, but it's a lot easier to do that with a lower dollar price. It's a lot easier to get someone to take a chance on a lower dollar price. And as you build up a reputation and grow, you'll be able to raise your price in tandem with that as people see quality and feel like it's worth
Yeah,
more.
absolutely.
So
I'm working on designing a knife now, and by working on it, I mean I've tinkered a little bit with the design. I'm still basically in the roll around the idea in my brain phase, and I've done some I did my very first kind of concept 3D model the other day, so it's starting to become reality. But the way that I do products is I generally start with the price point and then work backwards to the product, and I'm still not quite sure where I want that to be on this knife. I know for a lot of my audience, the $30 to $50 range is basically the impulse buy range for my market, and so I try to keep things in there. But I don't think I can do a knife profitably in that range. So I'm probably going to be somewhere more kind of in your same price point of like 60, 70, $80. Um,
are you wanting to actually make a knife blade at that price point, or are you still kind of looking at the utility knife route?
Yep, I'm making the knife blades at that point. Um, my goal is for it to be basically a competitor to like a Swiss Army knife. This first one is just going to be a small slip joint knife, but I'm going to when we do the Kickstarter later, add in the ability to have some extra tools in there.
I thought you said you weren't going to do a Kickstarter for this one.
Not right away. So we may do one later. The first knife we're going to launch is going to be just a simple slip joint, but then later we'll do a Kickstarter for a more of a multi-tool.
Okay, I'm following.
It probably won't have a huge amount of tools. It'll probably be like 2 or 3 tools total.
But this is funny to hear from the guy who didn't want to add a bottle opener or any other utility to any of his other products because he wanted them to be single use, and now he's going to make like a Swiss Army knife.
I don't know. I think a Swiss Army knife is a single use thing.
It's a single use multi tool.
It's a single use multi tool. Yeah.
One and done. All right, I've used it once. Time to get another one.
But the blade will be a whole adventure with those. I don't know. The utility blade makes a whole lot of sense for a huge number of reasons. The biggest one being when it gets dull, you can just swap them out. And one of the biggest problems that non-knife people have with knives is the knives get dull and they don't know how to sharpen them, or they're afraid to sharpen them. And so I'm basically designing this whole knife around the idea that it is easy to sharpen. Like that is the driving characteristic of this knife. And then I'm going to ship a sharpening stone or a little sharpening block with it, so the people won't be afraid to sharpen it.
So I guess that brings up the question for you, Benjamin. Is that the reason you went with the utility knife? Is you didn't either want the challenge of making your own blade, or do you like the interchangeability of the utility knife?
Yes and yes. Basically, I did not want to mess with like heat treating hard milling, all that stuff for like my first product. And I wanted to carry a knife on me. And so I came up with just like a utility knife. But then as I used it, I realized like how useful it was just to have a throwaway blade. Um, and you can customize it, get different blades. Some blades are better than others. I now sell all of mine with these cool like black coated blades, and they're supposed to be sharper. They might be a little bit sharper, but it doesn't matter. It's just a throwaway cheap blade. So yeah, I basically didn't want to go down the rabbit hole of like actual knife making because I didn't have that. Um, I didn't have like an oven. I didn't have heat treating, all that set up. And so this was like the easiest way to like make something that cuts.
Hmm. So, on a completely seems how you brought up heat treating. Um, I will say we did get a hot shot oven
Ooh,
last week on Friday.
nice. What'd you
So
get it
new
for?
purchase, huh?
What did you get it for, other than fun?
We got it because that product that we've been making for the muzzle device we've been making
Mm,
for another customer. We've been using the university that I teach part time at has a hot shot oven, and I've been basically taking about half a day to a full day once a week to go out and heat treat a bunch of stuff. And we're getting too busy, and I can't be away from the shop that long, and the volume that we're trying to reach with the um, basically it all worked out to where it was basically going to pay for itself in the time saved, and then we'd have a hot shot oven. And so we just pulled the trigger on it, got it, and we've used it for the first time today. So it was amazing. And I'm going to be probably using that a lot. And if we ever do decide, because seems how the topic seems to be is knives, we've wanted to make one too at some point. And so having an oven, being able to play around with it, um, is just another tool that we could maybe use at some point if we ever decide to go down that route. Um, but also, if we ever do any machining and we need to harden stuff or anneal stuff, we'll have that option too now. And so I'm looking forward to, because there's definitely been some stuff that we've wanted to buy and you can't find it hard or you can't find it annealed. And being able to do some of that now um, will hopefully be pretty nice. So we'll see. But just kind of funny because we just got one. So
Random material science question. I, for a long time, have had some blocks of aluminum in the bottom of my powder coat oven to act as like a thermal mass.
mm-hmm.
So that when you open and close the door, you don't lose as much heat and yada, 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 yada. Well, you lose the same amount of heat, but then there's more mass to help heat the oven back up again. We recently upgraded our oven, and so we now have a convection powder coat oven. We have a fan on the bottom of it. And that thermal mass has become a whole lot less necessary because we can get the heat from the coil at the bottom up to the top really quick, and it's just much more even in temperature. That aluminum has been sitting at like 400 degrees for like 1,000 hours. Have we ruined the temper on that aluminum? Because you soak aluminum for to harden it. If we hardened aluminum, have we made it brittle? Can I put that back in my scrap bin, or should I just get rid of it?
How big of a material are we talking, and what would you use it for?
It's a bunch
I,
of
I would.
pieces that are like 3 inches wide by 6 inches long and a half inch or three-quarter inch thick.
I probably wouldn't make customers parts out of it, but I would probably use them for fixturing or anything else. Like I wouldn't say it's bad material, but I probably wouldn't sell it with a product material.
Yeah. You think I've actually hardened it though? Like, what do they call that? It's not like they.
Aged.
Yeah.
It's like aged aluminum. I imagine you have done that. To what extent, I have no idea because while I do understand material properties, I am like very ignorant
Yeah.
to like what it actually takes to do some of that stuff.
You're the
Um,
college professor here. Come on,
yeah,
Harrison.
but I'm college professor for CNC machining. There was no heating up of stuff in that. I had to look up so I guess I'll get into a little bit of the stuff I do know about heat treating materials at this point. Um, so one of the biggest reasons I needed an oven like this is because the material that we are getting, um, the spring material we're getting for this, because there's a little spring at the back of this muzzle add-on. Um, you can only get it. I can only find it in hardened,
Hmm.
and I have to bend it. And the tight radiuses that I have to bend it in, because it's so hard, it'll just snap. And so you have to anneal it to be able to bend it into the shape, and then I have to be able to reharden it to hold that shape. Because when it's annealed, it becomes so soft that it doesn't act like a spring. So I'm basically having to, and also while it's hardened, if I try to cut it into pieces, it chips all of the shears that I try to use. It just destroys shears in
Because
its
it's
hardened
hard.
state. And so I have to anneal it so then I can cut it and then I can bend it and then I got to heat treat it. But when I harden it, it becomes so hard that it becomes brittle and it'll snap on the first use, and so then I have to temper it back to give it back its spring. So I'm like taking something that's like a perfectly good spring and having to bring it through the whole cycle so I can get it into the shape and where I need it to be. And
Ten
that's
ninety.
actually a lot of fun.
Is this 1095?
Um, I believe it's 1095.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
like
we played.
1095 or 1091, something like that.
I don't know. There's a couple in that range. We played this game at my last job, um, where we had a part they were making spring steel out of 1095. We got it in the blue temper, which basically means full hard and springy.
Mm-hmm.
And we did one batch of these little spring clips. They were to hold credit card readers for I think Walmart. But the first batch went fine, no problem. Second batch, every single one cracked on us whenever we went to form it. It ended up being a grain direction thing, but we went through this whole process of like trying to figure out heat treat and yada yada yada. Yeah, that was I've been through all that. I've been there.
Yeah. So we're having a fun time figuring it all out. I do need to figure out how to anneal these back because um, my first, and it might be a grain direction thing and it might be a temper thing. I'm not sure which it is. But the first batch of material that I got in a 25-foot roll, and then 6 months or not 6 months later. Well, it might have been 6 months because we were doing the testing with that first spool, and you could only the smallest spool I could get it in was 25 feet. So I think it might have been 6 months between that and then full production. But for full production, I got a 100-foot roll because I ran out of the 25, and for the 25-foot roll, I would snap a spring maybe one out of 30, 1 in 30. I'd have a spring that would fail when I tried to bend it. Um, but the 100-foot material, I had about a 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 that would snap. It was like double or triple um, the rejection rate. And my theory is that I just, because it was so much more mass, I didn't anneal it enough. Because I did test and I did try to re-anneal it with just a flame, and um, that seemed to help. Uh,
What color did you anneal it to,
um,
or temperate? I guess
it
is the word we're looking for here.
yeah, temperate. I would go to a very 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 light, uh, or just a like a very barely visible orange. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
probably
I would have brought it.
around, huh?
I would have brought it to like a blue. That's normally where springs sit, is a blue temper.
Yeah. Well, this. I was trying to anneal. I was trying to make it soft, and so I think it was probably around 1,000 to 1,100 degrees, I think.
Okay, that should be hot enough. That shouldn't give you a straw though. That should give you like a dark brown or something.
Oh no, it wasn't. I thought you were talking about like what was under the heat.
No, when you did the
Um,
temper cycle.
oh yeah. When it came out, it was like a straw color.
Okay, I would have gone to blue.
It was blue from the factory. It was factory blue,
Yeah, they,
but it was way too hard. At the
even as
factory
a
blue.
spring.
Oh
Like when
yeah.
you reformed it back into the spring, it was still too hard. Okay.
Oh no. Just too hard. No, I take it to a straw color so I could bend it and form it, and then once I was done after that, um, well, I don't know what color it was because I don't have anything to protect it from oxiding, so it's just black right now.
So then it might be soft. Yeah, because
No,
the temper colors happen before it starts turning black.
well, they're black because I'm dipping them in oil, and they're in open atmosphere, open air. So like, so what I'm doing. Okay, you're gonna make me go through the whole cycle. The first thing I was doing was I was taking them all the way up to, I think it was around 1,400 degrees, and then I was slowly cooling them down to anneal them. So it was a slow cool down to kind of relax them and to get them as soft as I could. I didn't have it programmed in there to cool slowly. So what I did on with both sets of both spools is I heated them up to about 1,400. I let them sit there for a little bit, and then I just pulled them out and set them on the concrete and tried to do the best I could to um, allow them to cool down slowly. And then for the when I tried to retemper them, or when I tried to reheat treat them, I took them back up to 1,400 degrees, and then once they were there, I would drop them in water and I would water quench them, and then that made them way too hard.
Yeah.
And then after that, I I would take them up to about 1,000 degrees, and then let them slow cool, and that would temper them back. And that's about where I'm at.
Okay.
So two times at 1,400, one is a quench and one is a slow cool, and then one time at 1,000 to temper.
Oh.
So, Benjamin, I think your internet's a lot better now. Like you're a lot clearer, and I don't. Is there? I wonder if there's as much a delay.
Yep, not this time, not yet.
No,
No,
but
we're getting close.
your the way you sound and your video is so much clearer.
Yeah, I don't know what you did, but it's a lot better.
Okay.
Oh, that would have been nice to have a while ago, but this works.
Yeah, like you would be telling something like you made like your batches were uh, uh, and I was like, oh, how big were they? Like what size is this?
There's a little bit of smile and nodding on here, but it'll all come across really well in the podcast thanks to Zencaster. As long as Zencaster lets us export it correctly, which is kind of a crapshoot at this point. But anyway, we've gotten to meta talk about the podcast that we're podcasting right now. So shall we wrap up?
That's awesome. Oh, this is the Harrison do the outro music. So,
which sometimes people can hear and sometimes they can't. Apparently.
Yeah. So I want to thank you guys for hanging out with us this evening, and as we hang out here with Ben or Benjamin from Black Fox Machining. Ben, we want to thank you for coming on the podcast and telling us a little bit about your story. I know it's been a ton of fun to follow you and see the stuff that you got going on. So I hope to see many, many big things and many more things come out. And then maybe one day you can follow in the trend of quitting a perfectly good job to take on a job that doesn't pay and start making things online and selling them.
You have much better equipment than I do right now, so if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. So we appreciate having you on. I love following your story, and yeah, we're gonna keep watching you. And for the rest of you guys, like, share, and follow. And this is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Design the Everything and Benjamin. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.